My fiancée left me for a richer man. She didn't know I owned the company he worked for. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I am 34 years old, and 6 months before my wedding, the person I trusted the most destroyed my entire world. My fiancée, Emily, left me for another man. Not because I cheated, not because we stopped loving each other, because she thought I wasn't successful enough. And the worst part? She left me for my own company's CEO, a man she believed had everything I didn't. Money, power, status. She thought she upgraded her life. She had no idea she had just walked away from the person who controlled everything. I met Emily 7 years ago when we were both starting our careers. Back then, neither of us had much. We rented a small apartment. We cooked cheap meals. We talked about building a future together. She used to tell me, "Ryan, I don't care if we're rich or poor. I just want us to succeed together." I believed her, because during those early years, she was the one person who supported me. When I stayed up late working on business ideas, she encouraged me. When people told me my plans were unrealistic, she told me to keep going. At least, that's who I thought she was. 3 years later, everything changed. The small software project I created became a successful company. But I never changed my lifestyle. I still lived in the same apartment. I still drove an ordinary car. I still wore simple clothes. I didn't want my success to change how people treated me, especially Emily. I wanted to know if she loved me, or the life I could provide. When my company started growing, I made one decision. I stepped away from the spotlight. I hired professional executives to manage daily operations while I focused on investments and future projects. My name was rarely seen publicly. Most employees didn't even know what I looked like. The company had a CEO named Victor Hayes, a confident, successful-looking man who appeared in interviews and represented the brand. Everyone thought he was the face of the company, including Emily. The first sign something was wrong came when Emily started changing. She began comparing me to other people. "Why don't you dress better? Why are you always working quietly? Why aren't you more ambitious?" I was confused, because just months earlier, she loved those exact qualities about me. Then she started attending more company events. And that's where she met Victor. Victor was everything she was suddenly attracted to. Expensive watches, luxury cars, designer suits, a powerful position. He knew exactly how to impress people. And Emily was impressed. One evening, she sat across from me at dinner and said, "I think we need to talk." I already knew. She told me she had feelings for someone else. When I asked who, she said his name, Victor Hayes, my CEO. I remember that moment clearly. Not because I was angry, because I was disappointed. The person who promised to stand beside me when I had nothing, left when she thought someone else had more. She looked at me and said, "Ryan, you're a good person, but I want a different future." I simply nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't reveal anything. I didn't tell her who I really was, because I wanted to see how far this would go. 2 weeks later, Emily announced their engagement. Social media exploded. Pictures everywhere. People congratulating them. Everyone thought she had found her dream life. Nobody knew what was coming, because Victor had made one mistake. He forgot who owned the company, and Emily forgot who she left behind. The day before their engagement party, I received a report from my legal team. Victor had been using company resources to impress investors. He had approved questionable deals. He had hidden important financial information. And now, he was preparing to make decisions that could damage the company. I had given him a lot of trust, but he confused trust with ownership. That was his mistake. The next morning, I called an emergency board meeting. Victor arrived confidently. He thought it was another routine meeting, until he saw me sitting at the head of the table. His expression changed instantly, because for the first time, he realized who I was. The room became silent the moment I walked in. Victor looked at me for several seconds. At first, he looked confused, then surprised, then nervous, because he recognized me, not from business meetings, not from interviews, not from any public appearance. He recognized me from one simple fact. My name was on every important document inside that company. I was the person who created it, the person who funded it, the person who owned the majority of it. And now I was sitting across from the man who thought he had everything under control. Victor tried to recover quickly. He smiled. Ryan, I didn't know you were attending this meeting. I looked at him calmly. That's because I usually don't need to. The board members exchanged confused looks. Victor laughed nervously. What does that mean? I placed a folder on the table. Before we discuss anything else, I think everyone should know who has been making the final decisions around here. I opened the folder. Inside were the ownership documents, the investment records, the agreements that showed exactly who controlled the company. The room went quiet because everyone finally understood. The quiet person they barely noticed was the person who had built everything. Victor's confidence disappeared. For months, he had enjoyed the attention, the interviews, the reputation, the feeling of being the face of a successful company. But he forgot one important thing. Being the face of something does not mean you own it. And he was about to learn that lesson. The board started reviewing the information I had gathered. The hidden expenses, the questionable decisions, the contract he approved without proper authorization, the meetings he held without informing other executives. Everything was documented. Victor tried defending himself. He said he was only doing what was best for the company. But the numbers told a different story. He wasn't protecting the company. He was protecting his own image. Then came the part nobody expected. A board member asked, Ryan, how long have you known about this? I looked around the room. Long enough. Another member asked, why didn't you reveal yourself earlier? I thought about that question. The answer was simple. Because I want to know who people were when they thought I had nothing. Later that evening, Emily called me. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Her voice sounded different. Not confident. Not excited. Confused. Ryan, why didn't you tell me? I stayed quiet for a moment. Then I asked, tell you what? She paused. That you own the company. I smiled slightly, because that was the only thing she cared about. Not why I stayed quiet. Not how I felt. Not what happened between us. Just the fact that I had money and power. She started explaining. She said she made a mistake. She said she was confused. She said she never stopped caring about me. But those words sounded different now. Because when someone leaves after seeing your struggles, and returns after seeing your success, you start questioning what they really loved. I told her something I had wanted to say for weeks. You didn't leave because I wasn't successful. You left because you thought someone else's success mattered more than mine. There was silence. Then she apologized. But some apologies come too late. A few weeks later, Victor was removed from his position. The company announced new leadership. Employees finally learned the truth about the founder who had been working quietly behind the scenes. But I didn't become someone different. I didn't buy expensive cars. I didn't show off my wealth. I didn't try to prove anything, because I already knew my value. Months later, I saw Emily at a restaurant. She was alone. She looked at me and smiled sadly. For a second, I remembered the person she used to be. The person who supported me before success arrived. But then I remembered something important. The person who truly loves you doesn't only stand beside you when you have nothing. They celebrate with you when you finally have something. I learned a valuable lesson from everything that happened. Sometimes people don't leave because you failed. Sometimes they leave because they cannot see the person you are becoming. Emily thought she was choosing a better future. Victor thought he was becoming unstoppable. But both of them made the same mistake. They underestimated the person standing quietly in the background. And in the end, the person they ignored was the one who had been holding all the power all along. The months after everything changed were strange. For years, I had worked behind the scenes. I was comfortable being invisible. But suddenly, everyone knew my name. Employees who had never spoken to me before wanted to meet. Business partners wanted to congratulate me. People who once ignored me now treated me differently. And that showed me something important. A lot of people don't respect the person. They respect the position. I decided to make one final change inside the company. I removed the culture of chasing appearances. No more rewarding people just because they were good at presenting themselves. No more allowing confidence to replace honesty. I wanted the company to represent the values my team and I built it on: hard work, loyalty, integrity. Because I had learned the hard way that someone can look successful on the outside while destroying everything behind the scenes. As for Emily, I never hated her. That was the surprising part. For a while, I thought revenge meant making her regret leaving. But eventually, I realized something. The moment she chose someone else because she thought he had more value, she already lost something important. She lost someone who loved her before success. Someone who believed in her before money was involved. Someone who would have shared everything with her. Victor wanted my position. Emily wanted the life she thought Victor could provide. But neither of them understood the truth. Money can create attention. Power can create influence. But character is what remains when everything else disappears. Today, I still run the company quietly. I still avoid unnecessary attention. I still live the same way I always did. Because the greatest victory was never proving that I was powerful. It was realizing I never needed anyone else to recognize my worth. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the person who changes everything.